friendly experience so kids see that there's a reason to learn. So I'm going to start the story though. Does anyone recognize what city this is? Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. And I lived there as a kid. I am the girl from Ipanema, that is where we lived. And I don't remember where that is, but Brazil in the 1970s was pretty ropey. Lovely people, very friendly, but in addition to having to worry about being kidnapped, lots of things just didn't work. Our elevator stopped between floors. It would literally stop and you'd see like feet and heads. The traffic lights, people just ran through them because half the time they don't work. The pool at the local park had the drain at the shallow end. So when they drained it, they had to actually squeegee the water uphill into the drain. I mean, it was absolutely nuts. We moved back to the US about a year and a half later. So at this point, I'm like 8. And here in the US, everything just worked. Elevators worked, traffic lights worked. And it was really quite startling even for a kid to see that. And the point is that things work when people do the math. The fact is, our lives depend on math every day. You know, when someone's working on the wing flap of your plane, or someone's got a syringe giving you medicine, someone had to do the math right for this to work out for you. And the real point is that 10 to 15 years from now, today's kids who are in this school are going to be fixing your wing flaps and giving you your shots. We have to make sure this generation can do math. It's extremely important. The problem is we just had this pandemic and, you know, nationwide, there's lots of variation, lots of districts. Obviously, this is a very focused district that's doing pretty well, but everybody's struggling in some way. Nationwide, we've had an 8-point drop on the NWEA for 8th grade math, 5-point drop for 4th graders, high school's lowest ACT in 30 years, like since the test was invented. You know, we've basically, on the nation's report card, moved back to 1992. We've wiped out any gains, which were pretty small over the last 30 years. Here in New Jersey, 68% of kids are not on grade level. And it's hard for the parents to notice because their kids' friends are not on grade level either. And I'm just gonna make my little dig here. The state has not released assessments, scores from last spring yet. So it's very hard to know what's going on. And some of our cities are really struggling. In Newark, literally 6% of kids are on grade level. That means when you see 16 kids going down the hall, one of them understands what's going on in class. That's how bad it's gotten. So I say all this because I really want to just wake us all up to the fact that math is extremely important and we're kind of in a crisis moment as a country. The real issue is that even before the pandemic, it wasn't so good nationwide. If you think about it, I mean, here are the high level numbers. 50% of kids were proficient, but we graduate 80% of them from high school. So right there you see there's a problem. And what that resulted in, I'm not going to get into all the little data here, but the PIAC is a test of adult numeracy. They've been doing this for years. And right now, about a third of adults in America cannot do two-step math problems with whole numbers or handle basic fractions and percents like 50% or 1/3. That's where we are. That's why restaurants calculate the tip for us, because people actually can't do it. How did we get here? And I'm not asking you that. I'm saying rhetorically, how does a country that gives a public education to everybody end up like this? Well, I'm going to now pose some theories as to why we're in this situation. There are thousands of reasons. And I also want to say, as just a precursor to this, that none of this should be taken as blaming schools. Schools have their hands full, and more than ever now with so many kids behind. And every teacher has like 25 kids. The reason I'm going to walk through this with you all is because you, as the parent, can be the playful math guide for your kid that your teacher does not have bandwidth really to be the way you can. The teacher's got 25 kids, your kids get 1/25 of their attention. At home, they get 100% of your attention when you're doing math with them. So very powerful, right? So I just want to set that stage for this talk. So first of all, kids don't think they get a lot of pages of stuff that sort of look like this, right? And actually, one group I am happy to criticize is the curriculum publishers, because they make it really boring. I don't know how you feel about it. Kids get pages and pages of stuff like this. So why are we learning this? And in fact, it's been shown with research, the obvious, which is that when kids feel that the math they're learning is relevant to like their daily life, they learn it better because they're excited and they dig into it. And actually, there's been amazing research about the brain showing that the parts of the brain that light up at like a beautiful equation are the same as when someone looks at a painting. Like you can ignite emotion about math and get jazzed about it, and that then helps you do better at it. Sadly, though, Gallup, which also does all the political polls, they ask students every year, they've been doing this forever, asking students how they think, how they rank school. Is it relevant? And over and over, kids say it isn't, and as the kids get older, the score gets worse. So by high school, kids are like, which is sad because high school has some of the most exciting content. So this is one problem we've had a long time. Number two, if we look at how we did school in the 1900s, which is how we as parents, well, I don't know, some of you are younger than I am, but how we learned math, it was very instruction-based, right? Has anybody heard any of these phrases in a math class, like carry the one, bring down the 5, in the long division when you're moving the numbers around, or multiply the bottoms when you're multiplying fractions? These are very mechanical ways of saying what's happening when you're doing a math problem. And it's not really the math. When you carry the 1 when you're adding, it's never a 1. It's actually a 10 or 100. Why do we say carry the 1? That's not even accurate. It's extremely confusing, right? Or bring down the 5. When you're doing long division and you multiply and you bring that number and you have to subtract because you're carving out sets of 14 or 7, you're not bringing it down, you're actually subtracting 0. Like there's math going on and we don't even talk about it that way. And that's very confusing, clearly, because we have a lot of adults who are not comfortable with it. This is an issue. It's also, this is sort of related, but not only do we mechanize the steps, but we tend, and again, I blame the curriculum publishers, they tend to take a skill and drill in on it on a chapter, and then the next chapter has the next skill, and that's all it talks about. And kids then, unfortunately, can kind of memorize what to do without really understanding the math. So if you're multiplying by 10 and you learn to move the decimal to the right, they start going through the worksheet, just moving every decimal to the right, and they get 100 on the right. Then the next chapter is divided by 10. You move the decimal the other way, and they just kind of keep moving that dot. Then they get the test at the end of the year from the state where both kinds of problems are in there, and the wheels come off the cart because they can't remember which way to move the dot. That's not understanding math. And it has been shown that when you fold skills together and do 2 or 3 of them at a time, you learn better. And the original study actually studied 3-pointer shots in basketball, and they found that players who move slightly over when they're practicing and keep shooting from different spots end up better at their 3-pointers than the ones who try to build the muscle memory in one spot. Isn't that interesting? Math and learning music and countless other things are the same way. Okay, and the third one, this might be my favorite, is that when we teach math, we're not connecting different parts of the brain. So when was this? In 2015, Stanford University revealed this kind of epic study. They had actually taken a bunch of 8-year-olds and followed them for 6 years. And then at the end of the 6 years, when the kids were 14, looked to see who was good at math and what could have predicted along the way who was going to be good at math. Because they had taken tests and they had grades and they had teacher observations. They found that the kids who were good at math at age 14, you could have predicted it with their brain scan at age 8. Because in the kids who ended up better at math, at age 8, they already had more connections between the spatial part of the brain, which is shapes, and the enumeration part of the brain, which is numbers, or you could think of it as geometry and algebra. Brains that can knit those two together and see numbers and think of it spatially, or see shapes and think of them numerically, end up better at math. Now, I can always tell who has a 9-year-old when I share this fact, because people are like, the good news is your brain is plastic. You can make these connections happen at any time in your life. It's just a matter of learning math in a way that blends the two. Any kid, any adult, I mean, you're learning right now, right? You're building connections in your brain. You're thinking about 3-point basketball shots. Anybody can do this, but think of the head start you give kids if you're doing this younger, like in a K-2 school, right? That's when you want to have it happen. I'm going to just share a little example. Just bear with me because I love math, but here's a great example of where there's a numbers way to think about it and a shapes way to think about it. If you think about, has anyone done cup stacking? Like racing, yeah. And you make a pyramid of cups, or you've seen cheerleaders like make a pyramid with your 3 on the bottom and then 2 and then 1. Only certain numbers can make those triangles, and they're called the triangle numbers. So if you have 2 on the bottom, you must have 3 total. If you have 3 on the bottom, you must have 6. 4 on the bottom, you must have 10. It turns out that if you know the number on the bottom, there's an equation to tell you how many are in the whole triangle, which is really cool. And it's, you take the bottom row and you multiply it by 1 more than that number and then divide by 2. So if you have 3 in the bottom row, 3 times 4 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. 4 on the bottom, 4 times 5 is 20, when you cut in half, you get 10. Why does that work? Well, here's a little shortcut. If you had to add these numbers quickly, what's a fast way to do it? Do you notice that 1 plus 6 is 7, 2 plus 5 is 7, 3 plus 4 is 7? That's a really fast way to add it up. It's all 7s. And if you make that into a formula, it turns out you have, if you go up to 6, you have 3 sets, and the amount in each one is set, and you end up with that formula. Here's a totally other way to think about it. This triangle is half of this shape, which is 3 tall and 4 wide, and then you divide by 2. Totally different way of thinking about it. That's the spatial way of thinking about it. This other way is the numbers way of thinking about it. You want your brain to do both, and that's what we want for our kids, is to make that happen. So, I'm going to talk about some things we've been doing at BedTime Math to get people thinking this way as parents, and schools too, to shape things up for their kids, to make math just an epic experience. So just quickly who we are. I founded BedTime Math 10 years ago. It really just, this is truly an out of the garage thing. My husband and I, when my kids were little, really little, we'd give them a bedtime story and then we'd read them, we'd make up a bedtime math problem about whatever we talked about at dinner. Flamingos, pillow forts, just make up a math question and they'd answer it. I did this with my daughter when she was 2, and then we would add and we would subtract, and then I rolled in a second child and a third child, and this is what we did for years. And parents started asking, what are you doing with your kids? Can you share this? Which I did. And now it's a website and an app and an email list. And an example, this is today's math problem. It's called Chickens Playing the Xylophone. This is a true story of a farmer whose chickens were bored and she put a xylophone in their pen. And they love it. They peck at it and they actually make music, which is just ridiculous. It just writes itself as a math problem. How many chickens? How many notes? If there are 11 chickens, how many feet do they have? You get the idea. This is what BedTime Math is. And this is today's math problem. So if you go home and you download the app, you can actually do this today. And there are levels of questions at different levels of difficulty, because there are 3 levels, because I have 3 kids. I needed like an easy one for my pre-K kid and a harder one for my kindergartner and 2nd grader. Research has shown, we've actually have a gold standard study out of U Chicago showing that doing this just 2 or 3 times a week moves your kid ahead 3 months in math skills in 1 school year, because they get comfortable and they have fun, and they see that math involves real life things that they enjoy, and it makes it real, and it changes the conversation. In addition to that, we started an after-school club. It's a free kit of materials, and actually for schools interested in you have after-school activities, you can get a kit from us, and it's all very kinetic, lively math activities. Here's an example of the time of your life. Kids actually race to make a clock on the floor with themselves. Those are clock numbers, and they learn how to tell time. All kinds of activities. And then we also now offer those activities to schools, and it's called Fun Factor. And again, it's to solve some of these problems that I was talking about, which we're now going to delve into. So one of our goals with that is ignite emotion. So let's go back to those kind of textbook pictures. You can learn shapes like this, or you can learn them like this. Glow in the dark kids take glow sticks and make all their quadrilaterals and learn all the names. They make lattices and see that only 3 shapes can tile nicely like this to make a lattice. Pentagons will not work. It's really fun to figure out why. You know, doing some bar graph like this, do you want to do this? Or do you want to take your own stuffed animals and categorize them and make your own graph on the floor, life size, and really see, do you have more reptiles than birds or whatever you're going to do, right? Like, this is not hard to do, right? Or fractions, like this is not fun or very real. But if you have kids draw their own picture and cut it into pieces, and then they roll dice and switch pieces with their opponent, you can figure out what fraction switched, what fraction didn't. You can do it again as decimals, endless. And by the way, the little kids in the house can just sit and learn counting and multiplication with this. These are not hard things to do, and yet it just has such an impact on kids when we're doing that. Goal 2, this now relates to this, which is how do you make it relevant to real life? So number lines are not very exciting, right? But in the dark, a runway with an airplane is, and this is called epic air traffic control, and you can't see this photo, but there's sticky notes with numbers, and kids roll dice, and they make an airplane out of 2 glow sticks, and they count them along, and they have to make sure the planes don't run into each other. Which, by the way, they have to do at the airport too, like this is real, right? And in fact, the older kids make 2 runways that cross at 12 or 18, and they skip count by 2s and 3s and predict whether the planes will crash at the crossing. And that's actually common factors, right? So you can take this and go older with it too. So again, just making it tie to real life. This is one of our activities for 5th graders. I'll just give you a little preview. How many of you have older kids that are not in this school? Okay. So this game is actually to get kids practicing with decimals, multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting. Sitting and doing a worksheet is not much fun. In this activity, you have teams, and they draw a card, and it's a tour. You form a band, and you give your band a name, and then you pick a card with 4 cities, and then the cities have the number of miles between them, rounded to hundreds. The kids roll dice and move around, and they have to buy gas and draw cards, selling t-shirts, selling concert tickets, and then you see who made the most money. And it's like practicing all these decimal problems. But they're not even thinking about the fact that they're doing decimals. They want their band to make more money than the hip hop act that they're competing against. So again, just trying to make it real. And then to that point about the parts of the brain, which again, I think is just so important and so doable for our schools and our families to do, is connecting the spatial and the calculation. One of the things, and you're not there yet if you don't have older kids, but multiplying fractions is just a giant mystery to a lot of adults and kids because we tend to just do a lot of worksheets. We've tried to bring it to life. So you know that when you multiply, you're making rows of things, right? When you do 4 times 3, that literally means you have 4 3 times, right? And so you end up with 12. It's just making an array or an area. So in our game Fractangles, we show that actually fractions work the same way. So you start by saying, well, if you have 1 times 2, right, you have 2 squares. If you have 1 times 1, you have just 1 square. And this is see-through cellophane. That's the pink and the magenta and yellow on top of each other. So if 1 times 2 means you took 1 2 times, and 1 times 1, you took the 1 only 1 time, what's 1 times a half? Well, it means you're taking it only half the time. So you slide one of them over and you see that the area of overlap is 1/2. What if you want a half times a half? It means you're taking that half only half the time. And that overlap shape is 1/4, and that is the answer. And in fact, if you look at this, you can kind of see that orangey red square is 1/4 of the total. You could try doing a half times a third, and you get a 1/6, and you can kind of see, right, that is 1/6 of the whole. It shows that fractions are just the same as integers. It's not a big mystery, but making it really tangible like this and in kids' hands and very spatial just totally makes it a different experience from cranking through the worksheets. So, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, there are lots of reasons that we struggle as a country, and we've taken decades of experiments and some successes and some failures, and we still have not figured out how to get this right. But these are 3 things that in BedTime Math we work on, and we think that, we've seen for ourselves that doing some of these things can really change, and a lot of it you can do at home, and it's not hard because you just use your kids' toys and art supplies, and you can really bring it to life. So, I will then just let you know some resources we have. The BedTime Math app is free. That's like the chickens playing the xylophone. You could go on the App Store or Google Play. I want to make a note that Google Play, we had to change our privacy policy. We're now in a queue waiting for it. So that one might not be in your store right now. But if you have an iPhone, the App Store one is out there, and you can check back on Google Play. As for the hands-on games, now we're a nonprofit. We do sell them, but at a massive discount. I mean, we basically subsidize the cost and make everything like, $3 or $4. You can actually go to that URL. If you find any of those games interesting, you can buy a pack. It's meant for 4 people to play. And if you have questions after this event, you can find me. There's my email address. And happy mathing. So that's my talk, and I'm happy to take questions. I know that was like a lot of 25 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of processing. And just so you all know too, here, especially pre-K3 really is who we're targeting this evening. Everything that we do is hands-on with our kids because we know that that's how they learn. It's everything from start to finish, math, ELA, every content area. So that's why too that this is critical, and really our message too as a school and a district is, as much as parents can support those conversations on a daily basis at home, just talking your children through, just, a drive, talking them through how to use the Spirograph, right? That was one of the,
I did not like if we're mutual fans of Spirograph,
yes,
which is the best math.
I'm like, and we have a giveaway for you tonight, so everybody will get one. But if you just want to talk a little bit about like what the relevance is, because so I was in Laura's presentation about 2 months ago, which is how this happened, and it really stuck with me as a mom, as well as a teacher, as a principal. And these are some things that I do just at home with my own kids too.
So I don't know who's played with Spirograph here. Okay. So you know that you have a little wheel with teeth, and it rolls around the bigger ring that has teeth, and you have a pen in there, and you make designs. It is actually teaching you long division and remainders, because if you have, let's say you have 90 teeth, and you have a wheel with 15 teeth, when the wheel goes around, it's going to end up right where it started, and it will make a 6-pointed thing, and it won't be very exciting. But if you have 96 teeth and you put the 15, when the 15 gets to the 90, it's a little off from where it was, and it starts all over and makes a new set of 6, and then it makes a new set until you get like a 24-point design, and it's really cool and beautiful. That's what's happening. It has to do with, it's actually mods. A clock is mods, like 1 o'clock is like 5 mod, whatever, on the hour. It's these remainders. Spirograph is just, and if you have artistic children, they love this, but they're learning math too. And so I still have my set from when I was a kid from Brazil, actually. And I made a table of like the teeth on here and the teeth on the wheel and how many flower petals the design had. I mean, it is very cool. So I encourage everybody to pick up one of these, and that's very nice of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and really too, same thing that Laura's talking about right now is the more we talk our children through these things, just on a regular basis, like, I also have out for you, you'll get this too. I brought you note cards because again, making the connections with colors and numbers, as much as we can expose our kids at home just to the concepts and talk them through these things. They're really going to benefit from those experiences. I also have flashcards up here that you can just incorporate into your discussions with your children as well. Colors and shapes. So again, everything that you've been talking about tonight about making those connections and helping our children. I've always played a lot of board games with my kids for this very reason, that hands-on application, just having conversations, making the connections with real life is all really, really helpful and goes a long way. And I can speak to that. I don't share this typically, but I have children ranging from age 1 to 17. I'm kind of on my second round of parenting here, so I've seen some of that really come to life too. Having a daughter who's now getting ready to go to college, I'm seeing even vocabulary, language, and her math skills. It's a lot. It's just, as a teacher, I embedded that in everything that I did with my kids from the time that they were born. So it has a tremendous impact, and that's the piece too that stuck with me in your presentation when I was there, is just how much this, that bedtime routine every night had such an amazing impact on your kids as well. So it's really wonderful. And then I just have some other resources up here. So please, on your way out this evening, feel free to stop by and take whatever's here. It's here for you. And just, so I have some die out for you. If you'd like to grab a set, just again, that hands-on manipulation. We try to use manipulatives with our kids in the classroom every day because we know that that's how those connections are made. In this young age group. And we also just have, again, so roll, build, and solve, adding and subtracting, and just making it a part of your routine and conversation at home. It goes a long way in supporting our teachers in the classroom and all the hard work that they do with your children every day. So again, we really are so grateful that you came out tonight, and thank you, Laura, so much. Laura came out really, and Laura does this, I just wanted to speak to that a little bit, as you explained to me when I was in that workshop with you, is that you do this because this is like your mission.
Yeah.
This is your calling. It's, so that really stuck with me too, that, Laura's just here to make sure that, that we're moving forward in math and
I love math.
Yeah. And she wants to instill that, and I just, really stuck with me. So thank you so much for coming out. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. I work in the financial industry, and one of the things that I care a lot about is my son becoming financially literate. So I was just wondering if your program kind of addresses some of the aspects of, money and accounting and things of that sort.
Yeah, we so there's first and second grade start that are about the coins and money, and the dimes are good for starting to teach place value and adding tens and dollars, adding hundreds. So we do have a game called Funny Money, and actually in Crazy Eights in the math club, we have kids take a whole bunch of dimes and quarters, because it turns out that if you have equal value of dimes and quarters, they will weigh the same, which is really interesting. Because if the quarter so if you have like $8 of quarters and $8 of dimes, they weigh like the same number of ounces, which is fascinating. And then for the older kids, like Band on Tour, that 5th grade one, all those math problems are actually about money. And the band, as they're going around, they start with like $8,000 in their account, and they're very aware of like whether they're up or down from where they started, So it's getting that sense of you got to watch your budget. Yeah. But I think it's really important.
And one additional perhaps question is, if your child expresses a desire to know more, so I know in the schools here, we teach a lot about adding, subtracting, and he's gotten real quick at that, but he wants to go to the next level. He wants to do the multiplications and the divisions, and he wants to go into fractions. What are your views on us kind of integrating that? Are we doing a disservice by teaching the old ways? Because that's the way I know, right?
Yeah,
Clearly,
this is
we
like
have
a big
some tools here.
Yeah.
So I don't want to I know there's a new way of teaching, so I don't want to necessarily,
I see what you're saying, you don't wanna be
putting him back in the old way.
the wrong body memory.
You know,
Doing
like,
right.
when I was teaching him addition, I was telling him, carry the one, and even if it's the hundreds or the thousands. So,
Yeah.
I'm just afraid, now I'm a little conscious about
I could follow
the
that.
old
It's like
ways versus the
confusing
new
our
ways.
children.
Yeah.
I mean, most of you know, I substitute and I see how they teach the math. Instead of like to carry the one we've been trying to teach our kids, it's like, no, it's a different way. And I'm like,
It's a different way,
it's
yeah.
a complete different way. And I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
sure, I'm gonna learn math now too. I mean, it's completely
Well,
different.
So this is a very, very hot topic. And in fact, at BedTime Math, we just in August started a campaign called Be Part of the Equation. And this is all sort of in the same spirit of having parents feel comfortable getting involved. And we've been doing focus groups with parents, and this is the number one thing they say. It looks different. I know how to multiply, but when I go to do it, they're like, no, Mom, you have to use a bar model, or no, it's a lattice. And I mean, the curriculum changed. So people get very nervous. What I would say to you is numbers are numbers. The math has not changed. And there's more than one way to solve any problem. There are like 18 ways to solve it. And as when kids see something and they pull out of their toolbox how to solve it, and it doesn't look like what they did in class, that should still be celebrated because it means they're nimble on their feet. We want nimble thinkers, not instruction followers. So I tell parents, sit with them, and when the kid says, no, that's not how we do it, the best thing to do is to actually put the two ways next to each other and show how it is the same thing. You're just moving the pieces around, maybe in a different order, because math is math. 2 + 2 is 4. One issue that is a real problem is that a lot of teachers, if the teachers themselves are not comfortable with the math and they see it done a different way, they will take credit off, and we are very against that. When you get the right answer, you should get full credit. And that's actually on our website, is something we advocate for to just raise awareness. But it's, don't worry about whether you learned it a different way. It's the same right answer.
What are your feelings about the Singaporean math? Like, there's all these different math styles besides this is great. I like how it's very creative and artsy and gonna use it.
Yeah. So Singapore math, I mean, it does work. That country is way ahead of us.
Right.
It can be dry. What's good about Singapore math is they cover fewer topics and do it much deeper. Like in the real version, they do the numbers 1 through 5 for like 6 months of first grade. Like it's very, very deep. And they take them apart and put them together every possible way. A lot of our curricula in the US, they spiral or they touch on it and don't go so deep, or they do numbers 1 through 20 all at once. It's just a very different way of doing it, but it has some backing to it.
Yeah, and definitely for Kiel too, I would say the number one importance as we, really try to reinforce is communication with teacher. In this building, our teachers, as you all know, are phenomenal, super open, very communicative, and, have a plethora of experience as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about the implementation and what that looks like. But I can tell you too that here in Kiel, we're not married to a program. We don't believe in that. We don't believe that there is a one size fits all or one program that's going to get us to the end result that we need. It's really best practice. And that's really what we stand for as a district too. And I can really, my wheelhouse is Kiel. And that's really who we are here is, and we believe too that if we've got a detour reroute, because that's what a student needs, that's our focus. That's why we have like Mrs. Ryman, for example, with our gold program and things like that. So we really, we're open to that too. So as you're going home and working with your children and supporting them, if you see something like we're talking about now, that's why we have these sessions, not only to bring in programs to our families, but to say, hey, like what's the feedback that, we can receive in the process. So if there's anything too, like, we're discussing tonight and some follow-up, reach out. You have Laura's information as well as mine, and we're a team here. We're a team to support you and, let us know what your needs are as you now start kind of peeling back the layers and supporting your children, and whether that's here in Kiel or Stony Brook, Mrs. Utah is the same as your children go on to 3rd grade and beyond. So we're a close network, and we have a new math supervisor joining us too. Hopefully you saw on the last Board of Education meeting. She was just, formally approved, so we have a new math supervisor coming in. She is currently Secaucus's math supervisor, so she's awesome. And it's a funny story, but I met her many, many years ago. It's just the way networks work, right? And she was phenomenal then, and so I'm really excited that now I get to reconnect with Ms. Trombetta here as our new math supervisor. Comes with a lot of experience, and she's going to come in and support this work in our schools too. So it's really exciting. Yeah, so
That's great.
again, thank you so much for coming out. We so appreciate your time. Laura, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So
Thank
great.
you.
And please, on your way out, please feel free to take anything that's of interest to you, and we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.